Hey, welcome back to the Guillemot Kayaks Workshop. I'm Nick Schade, and today we are continuing to work on finishing off this microBootlegger tandem that we built in the class up at the Wooden Boat School last summer. The student who won the raffle to take the boat home asked me to finish it up, so that's what we're working on. What I've often done for seating in these is an adjustable seat system, so you could paddle it solo or you could paddle as a tandem, and you can move the seats around depending on the weight of the people paddling. There's lots of solutions you could do, but this is one I've come up with for customers. It all revolves around a T-shaped rail here that I then machine this piece that slides on the rail, and I can use this to mount the seats. It has these holes every few inches where the peg goes down to set your adjustment on and lock it in place. It's a decent system. It's a little bit complicated to make, but that's what we're going to put in here. I could take this rail that's already made, but I think I have a better piece of wood that'd be a little bit more suitable, and that way I can show you how I go about making this. The few things that are going on is, again, a T-section. The holes are every couple inches. I over drill the holes to a larger size and then drill them to the final size. That way the hole itself is lined with some epoxy. So I pre-drill them, fill them with epoxy, and then re-drill them to the correct size. And so it makes a sort of lining of that hole, so moving the peg in and out doesn't wear out the hole too much, and it doesn't have a way to let water in. I also hollow out the bottom of the hole here. This is going to be mounted like this. So should any sand end up going down one of these holes, it has a place to escape and can be rinsed out. And again, it just sort of keeps the water from accumulating in that hole and protects it from rotting out in the long run. This particular one is made out of mahogany, and I've got a layer of fiberglass over the whole thing. That's probably overkill on the one I'm going to make this time. I'm going to use a piece of cherry, and I'm not going to bother with that fiberglass. I think that's probably overkill, but it's something I've done in the past. It provides a little bit more protection for the wood long term. I suppose it protects it from rot a little bit, but I think it's probably overkill. And for this situation, I don't think I'm going to bother. So my plan right now is to mill up my piece of cherry. So this is 1 5/8 wide. I'll cut a piece about 1 3/4 wide, and then mill it down to just the right size, and then we will drill the oversized holes with a countersink in them, fill those with epoxy, then re-drill, wait for that epoxy to dry, re-drill the holes, and mill this T-shape into it after drilling those holes, or at least after filling them. We'll see what order I actually do things in, but after filling them. And then with that milled in place, then we'll cut the hollows in the bottom. Something along those lines. As I say, I usually end up doing something completely different than what I just said on my intro to these videos, but we'll give it a try. I'll start 3 inches from that's 4 inches from the end. This is all very made up. So 4 inches from the end, I'm going to go every 2 inches. All right, I'll go out to about 8 feet. There's a knot here, but that should be good. Maybe I'll go one more. So I've got a 5/8 hole here with a little countersink chamfer on it. I didn't drill a 5/8 hole quite all the way through. You can see the tip of the drill just barely broke the surface on the bottom. I'm still going to put a little bit of tape on the bottom there, so when I pour epoxy in there, it just won't have any inclination to drain out at all. So I'm going to mix up some epoxy and pour it in these holes, basically filling it all the way to the top. I'm going to add a little bit of graphite powder to the epoxy, make it black, and also make it easier for the peg to slide in and out when it comes time. The graphite acts as a bit of a lubricant. I'll also add a little bit of milled fiber just to give it a little bit more strength. That was more of that than I wanted. So I didn't have a whole lot of description in this video, but the basic process you saw there was I took a piece of cherry, drilled a bunch of holes in it every 2 inches with a chamfer or countersink. I filled that hole with epoxy with a little bit of milled fiber and some graphite powder to make a black fill that's a little bit strong. Then I re-drilled that to a 1/2 inch hole, chamfered that with the countersink. Then I went ahead and milled the T-section using a router. So I first milled the T-section with a dishing bit on the router table, doing each side. Then I flipped it over and used my bead bit for coven bead strips and rounded over the edges of the T. After forming the T-section, I went to the spindle sander and cut a scallop in the bottom to let the sand out when it's installed in the boat. Then I brushed it all with epoxy, a couple coats using a torch to pop bubbles, and after that had all cured, I ran it back through the sander to sand the drips off the bottom. From there I sanded the epoxy just to get a rough sanding on it before installing it on the boat. Then I installed it in the boat, masking off either side of the center line where I had sanded for a good tooth, and applied some thickened epoxy to the bottom of the T-section and glued that down with just using some scraps of strips as clamps. I then came back and put whatever weights I could find in the shop to clamp that down while the epoxy cured. Then I lifted all those weights off and popped off all the little strips, and now it's done. So I'm not sure what I'll get to in the next episode. I do have the seats to work on. I'll be using seats I've already carved, but they have not been sanded yet. So I'll sand those and then glass them, and we'll see how far we get on that project. So if you're enjoying these videos, if you're learning anything, really appreciate your support. You can support me by just hitting like, turning on notifications, subscribing, all those good things. I also have a Patreon site if you want to chip in a little bit for direct support. Otherwise, the best thing you can do is buy plans. The plans for this boat are available on my website, as well as a bunch of other designs for small car-toppable boats. I also have a couple books out that describe the whole process of strip building kayaks and small boats. They're available on my website and through Amazon as well, and I get royalties if you buy through Amazon, so whatever works. You'll also find a list of tools I use in the description, and often those tools link to an Amazon purchase, where if you buy through Amazon, I'll get a little kickback. If I can't find an Amazon link for the tool, I'll just link to wherever you can find it. I won't necessarily get a kickback, but hopefully you'll find what you need there. So until the next episode, thanks for watching and happy paddling.